What's up, everybody? My name is Izzet, and today we're building from Atherdrift, but something about this race seems a little fishy. Captain Howler, the Sea Scourge. Now, Captain Howler is a 2 colorless mana, a red, and a blue. So that means he's 4 mana for a 5/4 with Ward 2 and pay 2 life, which is really good, especially on just a regular commander for 4 mana. However, this is not the only pro of this commander. His ability reads: whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each card discarded this way. So this is actually a really good ability for discarding your hand, discarding a bunch of different stuff. This is a really good card for pumping a single creature. However, the second part of the ability is where it gets a little tricky. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So this is either a go tall or go wide commander instead of a regular pump commander. Now, the regular pump commander maybe wants to pump everything for the end of turn and then call it. However, with Captain Howler, you can actually use smaller creatures, pump up multiple times with multiple different discard triggers, and keep drawing cards and then benefit off of that card draw. So first, let's hop into our discard and draw card engine. Starting off with Epiphany Storm. Now, Epiphany Storm is a simple aura that turns any creature into a pay mana and tap into discard a card and draw a card, which is pretty good. Especially for this deck, it allows you to trigger a single discard for a single pump for a invader. So it's not going to be good for TKOing an opponent with one hit. However, this is going to be good to have multiple creatures hit your opponent so that you can draw multiple times. Next, we have Famished Foregoers. So Famished Foregoers actually gives you some mana in a pinch. So anytime you cast Famished Foregoers, you could then probably cast another spell from your hand. So allowing you to not only cast a body so that you can use your pump, but using a mana ability to pump even more. Plus, it's a creature with an Epiphany Storm, so not only is it allowing you to cast more spells when it enters, but it's also a card that will allow you to get multiple discards off. Unlike our next card, Change of Plans. Now, this card is actually really sick because if you have to have a change of plans, this is the card to do it. It is a big explosive turn by allowing you to connive X. Now, you have to pay 2 and then pay X, but after that 2 mana, you get to connive, which means that each creature that you choose to connive actually allows you to draw a card and discard a card. Now, that's going to be big for big finishers or wide open hits, because not only are you discarding multiple cards, each creature is triggering separately, which will allow you to pump multiple creatures so that when you attack, you get multiple draw cards and you don't have to put all of your eggs in one basket. Let's say you have a Faithless Looting in hand, which is also really good for this deck. However, if you pair it up with a Swarm Intelligence, it allows you to copy that card. So not only are you being able to get one card, but each time that you trigger one of these spell actions to discard a card, you will also be triggering it again, giving you a separate trigger alongside your original trigger. That means that it is discarding and drawing you cards, so multiple creatures can be activated, and you could pump one singular creature still. So pretty good. And then for our final card of this section, we have Trail of Evidence. Now, Trail of Evidence is really good. Trail of Evidence actually says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, investigate. Create a clue token. It's an artifact with pay 2 mana, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. That means that each time you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you will also be getting an extra pump out of it. Even though it may be a pump that you might have to wait a little later on, it is value over time. So as the game goes on, your opponents are going to get weaker and weaker, and that's when you strike with something like this. But there is a certain type of creature you want to be striking with. So next, we're going to talk about the creatures that you want to pump and the extra fuel that's going to get you pushed over the edge. So we have Reservoir Kraken, which is a 6/6 that allows your opponent to tap it. Pretty manageable, right? Big mistake. That actually creates you a 1/1 unblockable fish token that you can use your pumps on. Now, this is going to be really good for drawing you cards and pumping in to win the game. And for a little bit of pump, how about Detective Satchel? Now, Detective Satchel is actually really good because when it enters, it gives you 2 clue tokens, which is really good for your draw and discard engines. However, another ability that's really good is if you sack an artifact this turn, you can tap it and create a Thopter, which is just good because it is flying and you're pumping it. Pumping a flyer that is easily to get out, and you're already sacking stuff with like Trail of Evidence to get these flyers. Speaking of which, Improbable Alliance allows you to create a fairy token whenever you draw your second card each turn. Now, this is going to be good for pumping on other people's turns and creating a fairy token. So whenever you pump and create a fairy token, you can actually just pump a token to allow it to block while not losing a token. So this is not only value for your board state, this is also value for a explosive turn that you want to maybe kill a creature that has been bothering you and just want to take care of something. However, Cryptic Pursuit is an enchantment that whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell from your library, you may manifest the top card of your library, which creates you a 2/2 creature. Now, if that card were to die, Cryptic Pursuit actually allows you to cast that instant or sorcery until the end of your turn next turn. So this card gives you a creature to pump and allows you to cast pump spells if this creature were to die, or you can flip them face up at any time by paying their mana cost. So either way, you are not losing anything. Actually a super solid card for this deck. I should be using it if you're going around this, I think. And last but not least, Skywise Teaching actually generates flying monk tokens. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may use a 1 and a blue and you may create a token. So instead of using your entire hand, because your hand is very valuable. So using your mana to not cast another card and actually keep it in your hand will allow you to have fuel for your commander to pump and draw cards. You always want to keep one card in your hand in this deck, and this is a good way of not wasting any mana on your turn. Now finally, let's get on to the final wave. How are you going to win with this deck? How are your opponents going to lose against this deck? Well, first we have Embergale. And Embergale reads, creatures target opponent controls can't block this turn. Deals 1 damage to each white and or blue creature that player controls. So for 1, this is good against control players. For 2, you get to attack freely with pumped creatures. So this card is actually the best of both worlds. That's something that this deck actually exceeds at. Using stuff like Tramiocrasis, it actually allows you to pump these kind of creatures, attack in with them, and then, so either your opponent has to block with all their creatures or allow this creature to hit them. So whenever you're swinging in, that's 2 options. That's another thing that this deck gives you options, and that's the best part about it. Now, Omniseize actually allows you to put a counter on it each time you draw a card, and if you have 8 counters on this, you may remove those 8 counters and create an 8/8 Kraken. So that is a body being made by just using your commander for a draw engine. And speaking of big fish, how about Frostlair Lorefish? Now, Frostlair Lorefish actually gives you 2 small fish. So on entry, this creature gives you a fish token and it gives you treasure tokens. However, this is the only thing he does. He makes all fish unblockable by humans. If someone's playing a human deck against you, all of your evaders are either flyers or they're fish. So all your big creatures and all your small creatures are either flyers or fish. And if they're fish, they're going to be even harder to block. That's good for cards that are like in Bloomburrow and stuff that allow you to tap, that allow you to gift a card to get a fish token and stuff like that. Very good. On top of this, this card also gives you a huge body, which is always good for decks like this. I would just use. Last but not least, we have Chrome Host the Seed Shark. Now, Chrome Host the Seed Shark actually allows you to incubate X whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell. If you're casting large spells like Call of the Skybreaker, you will also get a creature, and then you will also get an extra creature on the back end. Now, I know incubator tokens are not perfect, but having an extra creature that is also very large, because you are casting very large and very small things, you are basically doubling your board state by just casting instants, which you're going to be doing to draw and to discard. So I think that this is a perfect thing to use for this deck. Now it's time for everyone's favorite things, the upgrades. If you're going to upgrade this deck, these are 3 upgrades I recommend you buying. Starting off of Well of Ideas, which is an enchantment that whenever it enters, you draw 2 cards, and then at the beginning of each player's draw step, the player draws an additional card, and then at the beginning of your draw step, you draw 2 additional cards. So that's really good, because if you're using this deck, you're going to realize you're running out of your hand very fast. So anything to get more creatures in your hand than you're discarding is going to be great. And then Nexus of Fate allows you to take an additional turn after this one. And if Nexus of Fate were to be put into the graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So whenever you're casting this and it's put into the graveyard from your hand, you will actually just shuffle it back into your library. So if someone counters it, you're kind of screwed, but you get an additional turn to hit an additional time. Usually 1 turn is enough to devastate somebody, so 2 turns you could legitimately kill somebody very easily. And last but not least, one of the best cards I think for this deck, Ancient Silver Dragon, which of course has flying, it's a dragon. However, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. So if you're pumping this creature and you're swinging in with it, you can actually roll a dice and then you draw cards equal to the result of the d20. So that's very good. And then you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. And For my final thoughts, I think that Atherdrift is actually going to be a lot better than I expected. And I don't know if you guys have seen my latest video, but I tried out something new. I went on Reddit and I tried reading some bad Reddit comments. And if you guys are interested in that, check out this video right here. And if not, I have other builds right here. Thank you guys for watching. Happy castings.